I just, I just, I just speak my peace, keep my peace.
What's good, y'all? Welcome to the Speak My Peace podcast. As always, I'm your gracious host, Greg Lacey. Like we always do about the time of this episode, reach you all in good health, good wealth, and to take care of yourself and your loved ones, as we know how important that is. Last episode was a very good one. Well, not even only last episode and previous episode, so episodes 128 and 129 were definitely very good episodes, just considering the feedback that I've gotten from you all. It's always rewarding to know that my rants are reaching people, but also knowing that, it's hitting people, knowing that it's sticking to the ribs, as, rappers say. I appreciate that feedback a lot because, again, a lot of times those things are rants. I definitely have plans and speaking about certain things that have talking points, but when it gets personal to me, it sometimes becomes rants. So it lets me know a lot, knowing that not only am I, giving you all an account for my life, but knowing that, you all relate to it or you have feedback on certain things. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the feedback. One thing that I realized last episode that I overused, to me, in my opinion, was the phrase of psyching yourself out. I said it a lot, and looking back on the previous episode, I realized that phrase in itself deserved its own episode. So we'll use this episode to dive deeper into that phrase. But before we do get into that phrase, we've spoken a lot about certain things that are required as we continue on this journey called life and becoming the best version of ourselves. I've covered two very key components, two very key factors in what's required to be the best version of yourself. The first one being episode 109, where we cover discipline. Discipline in the sense of just being patient, being steadfast, and understanding that what you want is going to take a long time to get, and understanding that if it comes fast, it's not good. But the longer you have to wait to achieve or to attain said thing that you're working for, is the greater possibility of that thing having longevity. So understanding just being steadfast and on your journey to whatever you're chasing, but also discipline in the sense of exemplifying and understanding that you can't let anything or anyone trick you out of your spot. Understanding that your life purpose is hanging in the balance, and you can't let anyone alter what you're chasing or what you're going after. You can't let anything or anyone interfere with that, because there are going to be a lot of things that may appear on your journey to derail you from achieving that goal. And so you have to exemplify discipline to understand that what you are doing in the current moment is bigger than you, and you're chasing something way bigger than whatever you're going through. Another key component we covered was sacrifices. We covered that in episode 126. We cover sacrifices in the sense of just giving up things. You have to be able to, in order to become the best version of yourself, there's going to be a lot of things that you've grown accustomed to over however many years you've been living, and that you love and that feels good, that you had to release. And releasing those things is uncomfortable. And so you have to understanding that you have to be uncomfortable for a while to become the best version of yourself. And a lot of us don't like it. And if you haven't done it before, you're not going to like it. But in order to be the best version of yourself, in order to reach a new level, you have to make sacrifices. It is very imperative on our journey to become the best version of ourselves, and making those sacrifices. If you don't make those sacrifices and you don't exemplify discipline, the possibility of you becoming the best version of yourself or whatever you're chasing is highly unlikely. There are other components that go into it as well, but I feel like those are the two key components. And speaking about just becoming the best version of ourselves, going back into that phrase that I used and psyching ourselves out, a lot of time that journey is halted by us before we even start the journey. A lot of times we speak about derailments. A lot of times we speak about roadblocks. A lot of times we speak about brick walls you have to run through. A lot of times we speak about criticism that we face in chasing or achieving certain dreams. And those things it's very important to detail those things, because the fact that you've overcome and beat the odds is a reward within itself, is something that's very satisfying. But we can't miss out on the fact, or we can't ignore the fact that that journey was halted in the beginning because we didn't believe it. I want to speak about this in the sense of even in sports. you have to be crazy enough to believe the impossible is possible, because if you don't believe that, then it's not going to be possible. You don't wake up one day and say that you're going to be better than Michael Jordan tomorrow. No, you work towards that, because Michael Jordan worked towards that. Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player in the world, and that man has worked to achieve that status from his childhood years and through his professional career. Like, that wasn't just something that he just stumbled upon. Being the greatest at what you do is not something that you just stumble upon. It's not something that happens by happenstance. It's literally, you have to work towards that. So for Joe Blow to think that he's going to wake up on Wednesday and be the best basketball player in the world on Friday, it's crazy. It's craziness. But if Joe Blow believes on Wednesday that he's going to work to become better than Michael Jordan, it's not craziness. It's something that's achievable. And that's what becoming the best version of yourself is. It's believing that you can be the best version of yourself, that you can't psych yourself out. You can't halt your progress and tell you something that's impossible. Because the minute you start to believe, or even not believe, even the minute you start to tell yourself that something is impossible, that type of negative thinking then invades your brain, and then you start to believe it as well. And so you're not even interested in traveling down that path that you're supposed to travel down to becoming the best version of yourself, because you don't want to. You don't believe that that's something that's attainable. And then we're going back into facing the criticism and the roadblocks and derailments along the journey. When you compare pair those two things together, then you really become derailed and you really become stalled. But that journey begins and ends with you. You have to believe that. You have to know that. If you want to be the greatest educator in the world, you have to believe you're going to be the greatest educator in the world. If you want to be the best mother or father possible, you have to believe that you're going to be the best mother or father possible. If you want to be the greatest basketball player in the world, you have to believe that you're going to be the greatest basketball player in the world. You want to be the most wealthiest businessman in the world, you have to believe that. It starts with that, as I said in the previous episode, it starts with that formulation of that thought. Once that thought formulates in your mind and you start to believe that, you can then set out on a path to becoming the best version of yourself and achieving and attaining those things that is unimaginable. Some people will say unattainable. Some people will say inachievable. Those outside thoughts and those criticism and those people telling you that you seem crazy for even chasing a certain goal, it doesn't matter, because your biggest critic is yourself. You can physically stop yourself and you can mentally stop yourself. Everyone else can contribute to it. But again, that journey, that process, it starts and ends with you. And I see this conversation happening a lot, especially on social media, is this thing called imposter syndrome. And I think that's what it is that we all suffer from imposter syndrome one way or another. For those of you who don't know what imposter syndrome is, basically it's this, I believe it's just like this thought or idea that all the things that you have achieved in your life, especially if you're someone who have achieved a lot, it happened by happenstance, it happened by luck, it happened by perfect timing, and you just happen to be in the right space at the right time. And we have to begin to rid those negative thoughts, because no, you achieve those things because you work towards those things. You achieve those things because you was crazy enough to think that those things were achievable. You lived the life that you lived because you did both of those things. You worked towards it and you had this thought that I want to live this life by this age or by this point in my life. And then you went out and you sought out and you made sure that that thing came to fruition. I myself, I'm a key conspirator in the imposter syndrome. I've spoken about it extensively within this podcast. And most recent was last year. I don't remember what episode it was, but if you all remember, during this journey of my evolution of becoming a greater version of myself, the person who I'm still growing to become, I had to evolve and I had to become not a new version of me, but a newer version of me. The difference between that is that I'm not a different person, but I had to understood that there were certain things I had to shed. There were certain things I had to improve to become a better version of myself. So I was a newer version of myself rather than a new version of myself. But in order to do that, it was a lot of evolving that came from that. And that evolving started really the end of 2020, actually the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022. If you remember, I went on vacation for my birthday 2022, and I spoke about just how I always go on vacation with the mindsets of people that come from where I come from are not supposed to vacation to those places that I vacation to. And that wasn't true. And I spoke about how I had to get rid of those thoughts, because those vacations happen at whatever point in my life, and they're going to continue to happen in my life because, one, I believe that I can vacation. I believe that I deserve to take a week off, take 2 weeks off of work and go to these lavish islands and go to the Caribbean and go on these nice cruises, because I believe I deserve that. Aside from believing I deserve that, I work towards those things so that I can afford them financially. I'll also be able to afford them mentally. Like, those things aren't easy. To be able to, take a week off and put everything on pause and then just go chill for an entire week. That's not an easy thing to do for anyone, just to pause your life for an entire week. Granted, you are enjoying your life during that time, but at the same point, you're pausing something else, you're leaving something else in behind. And so it takes a lot of work to get to that point. And so once I got rid of that, I started to go into vacations a lot more smoother because I believed I deserved to be there. The formulation of those thoughts came, and I'm gonna be honest with you, a lot of my vacations are inspired by the rappers I listen to. Like, I've been listening to Jay-Z since elementary. And if you listen to Jay-Z's earliest rhymes, he talk about these lavish vacations. He talk about having plugs at the same time. And he talk about going to Puerto Rico. He had the Big Pimpin' video where he's on a yacht. Like, this is a rapper that I look up to. This is a business. This is an entrepreneur that I look up to. And he's been speaking about this for my entire life. So I have this thought in my mind, like, here's somebody from the same type of environment I come from. In certain instances, even worse than what I come from. And he's able to achieve these things. He's able to live this life. So why can't I live that? It started with that formulation of, okay, I want to go to these places. I want to go to the places that my favorite rappers rap about because they say how lavish these places are, how beautiful these places are. I want to get out of the concrete jungle that I grew up in, and I want to be able to live in these places. I don't even know if I can call it a concrete jungle, because I know New York people call where they grew up concrete jungle. That's really a concrete jungle. I grew up in Compton, which is not far from LA, and we got beaches and stuff, but you'll get what I'm saying. But no, to get back to what I was speaking about, I understood that those vacations and, those weeks off were attainable because I worked. Like, a lot of people, they start working in their teenage years. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that. But when I did start working at 19 and to this point, I've been working my ass off. And so I'm able to afford those things that I can afford. I'm able to go on vacation. I'm able to live in these spaces that, I once dreamed of, because I thought and I believed that I could go to these places. So now I seek out these places and I go to them. Even with work, I've spoken extensively about me believing that people from the environment I come from are not supposed to be in the space that I be in. And that's not true. Yes, the career path that I'm on and the career path and the career field that I'm in is something that's not commonly sought out. It's not something that's common within the environment that I come from. That's not because it's unachievable. That's because we don't have the knowledge. That's because we don't know people who are media planners. We don't know people who are in the career fields that we are in, the career fields that we are in, from the environments that we come from. And so I had to rid that thought of believing that this was something that was foreign to my environment. It's not. It was just something that we just didn't know about. We didn't have the knowledge in. And now I kick down the door. I can implement, or I can imprint that idea in the brains of others that come from that environment. We don't have to grow up and be an entertainer. You don't have to grow up and be an athlete. You can literally grow up and work a 9 to 5 and still make a lot of money. And if you don't want to make a lot of money, you can still be in a corporate world. You don't have to be in those spaces that a lot of times we think are our only options. That's not the case. And I went into my career field and believing that I'm not supposed to be here, and people where I come from don't be here. And it was insane that I believed that. In all honesty, I'm very proud that, I'm from where I'm from, and I use every instance that I can to tell people where I'm from, because I think that they have that same idea. We have to rid these ideas of these statistics, because a lot of times for us Black people, our lives are already made up by people who won't step foot in environments that we were raised in, or our parents were raised in, or our grandparents were raised in. They tell us that because of our household structures. They tell us because of our parents' incomes. They tell us the type of crimes that happen within our areas or our neighborhoods, that we are set for a certain type of life. And so when we burst out of those things and we see that life is bigger than what people had planned for us, it shakes up the world a little bit, because it's like, what are you doing here? And so we have to be crazy enough to believe that. We have to be crazy enough to believe that our lives are bigger than the block. We have to believe that our lives are greater than those statistics that they have set out for us based on our environments, because that's a box they try to put us in, and we can't allow them to pigeonhole us. We have to be crazy enough to believe that this world is full of vast opportunities, and we're going to use every ounce of our life and every ounce of our body to achieve whatever the hell we want, because that's what's most important, that we set out on a journey to become the best version of ourselves, and we do that by any means necessary. And that, meaning by any means necessary, that you have to formulate those thoughts. You have to be crazy enough to dream of these things. I think that you have to, in some sense, have some form of delusion. You have to have delusion in the sense of believing that every single person around you may believe that whatever you have your sight set on is inachievable. And the minute that you start to speak those things in fruition, or those things start to come to fruition, they see it as, wow, that's unordinary, or wow, how to, like, the minute those start to formulate, you start to put the plan into action, and it begins to rub people the wrong way. You start to understand the importance of your life. You start to understand that, hey, no one stop you. No one can block the path that you're destined to travel upon but you. And you have to believe that by any means necessary, as I say. As we get out of here, I just want to say, man, every single one of us, we're traveling on this path that we've been chasing for a unique amount of time, whether that be a year, whether that be 5 years, or whether that be all our lives. We all have our eyes on, like, basically achieving something that is not easy to accomplish. And in order for you to turn that impossible to possible, you have to 100% believe that that thing is achievable. You have to 100% believe that that dream or goal will come into fruition at some point in your life. And the minute you become crazy enough to think that, the minute you become crazy enough to believe that, that thing becomes attainable. That's all I got for y'all this week. As we get out of here, my what to watch for this week is a great movie coming out featuring Tiana Taylor called 1001. Once again, as we get out of here, my what to watch for this week is 1001 in theaters this Friday. That's the Speak on Peace podcast for this week. I'm out.